Hey guys, this is Nick Davies, also known as Dang16 here on Deuces Cracked and in the online poker world. I am brand new to the site. I've been brought on to do some no limit hold'em MTT, multi-table tournament instruction and coaching. Very excited for the opportunity. Looking forward to producing some great content for you guys in the near future. And yeah, really excited to be here. So let's get started and talk about my first season, my first project here at Deuces Crack. I am going to do a series of episodes, including this one, discussing MTTs from the ground up, essentially looking to give a new novice player or intermediate player or a player transitioning from cash, sit and goes, or live play, um, a blueprint, skill set, kind of guidelines for attacking MTTs and just really being comfortable and confident playing, and hopefully that will lead to some success early and continued repeated success. So let's begin the episode and talk for a quick second about No Limit Hold'em MTTs, what they are, and why we play them, and what makes them so unique. There isn't a whole lot of things like a poker tournament in the world with the combination of luck and skill and just the ever-changing nature of it and just the competition. It's a very unique competition, and yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. The lure of them is very amazing. But bottom line, they're very unique in the fact that it is constantly changing. The blinds moving up, the structure, people going from more chips to less chips, people doubling up or busting, losing players, playing not at a nine-handed table all the way down to two, when your head's up at the end. It's just a constantly changing game that, you know, to be good at, you need to always be adapting and learning. And that's another huge part of the lure of MTTs. Another reason I think we play them is the fact that there is that lottery feel, the combination of luck and skill. There's a lot of recreational players and value in no limit hold'em tournaments, whether that be live or online. There's always people who have turned into ESPN for the first time who are lured to the game and want to try it out, and who can blame them? We were all there at one point. So, bottom line, no limit hold'em tournaments are very unique. They're very very fun. There's nothing like playing, down to your first win, especially in a big field or a field that you've always wanted to win, and you know, just constantly changing. What to expect if you are a player who's looking to get into playing MTTs regularly, or maybe you're making the transition. There's a ton of variance involved. It's the nature of the beast. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about payouts here later on in the first episode. You can't expect to be making money every day. So if you're a person who doesn't do well with kind of a roller coaster effect, or you're looking for something more consistent, MTTs might be difficult for you. So definitely be ready for some big swings in your bankroll, both up and down. It is just the nature of the beast. Also, if you expect to play them and you want to be successful, you need to be ready to constantly learn. Just as I discussed about tournaments being ever changing, the game and the players are always getting smarter and changing and doing new things. I mean, it changes week to week, buy-in to buy-in. It's pretty crazy. That's once again there isn't anything like tournament poker. Even I mean even poker as a whole, but MTTs in general, they're just constantly changing, and you have to be ready to be changing with them. Yeah, kind of just a little quick discussion in there. Now I would like to start discussing the plan for the series, kind of our learning path. How let's lay out how we're going to learn this series. We'll overview the series, and then I will give you a little bit of information on me, my style of play, and my coaching approach. Series overview. It's kind of b- breaking it down into episodes and concepts. As you see, the first thing I have up there is the basics. That's kind of what we're going to go over today after I give you our plans for the series. In the basics, we'll talk about the different types of MTTs, structures, how they're different, payouts, field sizes, kind of just the pros and cons of all these different basics. We'll also briefly discuss some tournament objectives and some styles at the end. Very brief and basic stuff today. A lot of you guys here will know everything that we talk about here in the first episode, but stay on board. It's going to be a great foundation for the rest of the series, and everybody will get something out of it. So that's what we're going to be doing today in today's episode. Next, there will be the early game. This is going to probably the longest part of the series. Might take 1.5 or 2 full episodes, as many of the concepts apply to the rest of MTTs. We'll be going over everything from bet sizing, pot odds, when to draw, pot control, position. Position will be so big. That's a huge part of my coaching. Aggression, another thing that I will always be focusing on. We might touch on some three betting, how to play different hands, when to be a little more gambly or aggressive, when to sit back, how to develop and then use reads. We'll also go over the beginning of kind of quote unquote my default strategy. The game is ever changing. We'll always be talking about that. We'll always be looking to adapt, but I do have, there is definitely default strategies and some guidelines that I tend to follow when I play. So we'll talk about all of that in the early game episodes. Mid game, I note here that many of the concepts will carry over into the mid stakes play from the early game, but there will definitely be some differences. First off, there will be the beginning. You'll start to see stack size parity. This means that the stack sizes can be vastly different. You might have a humongous stack to your right, a tiny stack to your left, and you're right in the middle. And as the tournament has now progressed a little bit, and it's just not as even as it was earlier. So now will be the beginning of adapting. Annie's also begin to come into play in the mid game, so we'll discuss how that changes play, how we can use that to our advantage. We'll begin to in the mid game, we'll start to see a lot of the inflection points that are very important in tournament poker. A quick definition: an inflection point is at a point in the tournament where a certain variable dictates what you can do. That might be getting switched to a different table, not having the reads, or it might be stack sizes. Harrington on Hold'em books talked a lot about inflection points. When you have a certain stack, you need to be able to change your play. We'll discuss many different inflection points. Also, during on those inflection points, will they actually do start in early game and go all the way to heads up. There's many different ones, and we'll discuss at length. Mid game will also be when we start to approach the money, so that will be something that we'll discuss and take into account. All right, the next concept after mid game will be bubble play. This is the most dynamic thing in MTTs. It is, you know, very, very interesting. Once again, always changing, and you'll never see a bubble exactly the same. It's just how it is. We're gonna teach you how to use the bubble to your advantage. We'll talk about when it kind of is at your disadvantage. There's situations where you know you just can't really do anything on the bubble of a tournament because of the situation you're in, whether it be stack size, position at the table, other factors. That's the type of thing that we will discuss in the bubble episode of the series. Next up, in the money play, a lot of the concepts once again jump over. For example, there are money bubbles inside the money play, with prize jumps. 16th place might pay quite a bit less than 15th. So, some of the bubble stuff will come into play. Position and aggression, stuff that we'll talk from the get go, is always into play. So, we'll always be discussing that. Also, a lot of other considerations as well. Now that we're in the money, maybe a player who was timid before the bubble might be going crazy now, and we'll talk about combating that or developing new reads. Also, we will discuss adapting and combating the better players. The cream often rises to the top. And while there is a lot of gamble in MTTs, there's also a lot of skill. That's why we're trying to improve, and those skilled players will often be there at the end. So we'll talk about playing them. Lastly, final table. We're still in the money, but there is nothing like a final table. There's a lot of dynamics and things that are involved in it as well. We will discuss how to attack final tables with different stack sizes, different positions, how to use reads developed throughout the tourney. You know, when we have two tables left, especially if we're only playing one or two tournaments at the time, we need to be watching both tables and developing reads on other players. You might be doing this from three or four tables down, watching the other tables if that's something you're good at. So we're going to discuss using those reads. We will discuss attacking a certain bad player. All that's another concept that goes back all the way to the beginning. We love we might be attacking a bad player from the first hand of a tournament on, but there's just many different considerations at the final table, just as there is at the other different points of the tournament. So there will be a lot to discuss. Also, during the final tables, we'll have a small discussion on ICM and chops. I'm by no means an ICM expert, but I do know how to use it to my advantage. To a pretty good extent, and we'll discuss chops, when it might be beneficial to you to chop or when it might be beneficial not to chop. So a lot to discuss. I'm really excited for all the different episodes and parts of this series. There's so many different concepts to touch on. I hope that we get a good mix and really focus on those that are most important and those that you can duplicate, as a player. Stuff that'll really resonate and Stick, resonate, stick, same thing. So, um, yeah, kind of rambling here. Let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about another part of our learning path, not just outlining what we will be learning, but kind of how. We'll talk about my style in coaching. I really like to focus on fundamentals. Like I just said, I want something that will stick and that you guys can duplicate and to be consistent with and continue to grow and develop on. Whether if you're brand new to tournaments, I want to give you the skill set to where most of these fundamentals and skills you will use, whether it's a $1 tournament online or the $10,000 main event at the World Series of Poker. So, fundamentals, stuff that you will always have and be able to develop and grow on. Some of the fundamentals that you will hear me focus on a ton and I will pound into the ground. Position. Last act in poker is just so important. Just like it is in just about anything. When all the information is on the table and you get to make your decision, you can make an informed decision and hopefully the best decision possible at the time. Position is going to be one of the quickest leak finders for novice, intermediate, or maybe even transitioning players. A lot of people from the get go, you look down and see King Jack suited, and it's a good looking hand. It flops well. It's in the top. It's definitely one of the higher end hands. Well, just knowing that is kind of first level thinking. We're going to teach you to being able to look at the King Jack and also your position as well as other factors and then go on. Position's a huge factor in that, and it's just I'm kind of rambling here. Sorry. There's going to be spots where King Jack looks good, but your position doesn't allow you to play it. So, sorry, that was kind of a little bit of a spiel, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. Also, position allows you to kind of be more speculative or a little more gambly. 3-5 suited isn't a very sexy hand, or it isn't really that good under the gun. But if you're on the button, last to act, huge stack, and 9 people limp before you on the button, and your last act, you can flick in 3-5 suited and have the information and position to make that profitable in the long run. Aggression, another fundamental that is just so important in poker. If there is one thing in poker that every good winning player has, more than any other, every single one would say aggression. No matter what, you have to be aggressive. Whether you're a tight player or a loose player, when you get involved, you need to be aggressive. For example, I just don't open limp. If I am the first person to act in any pot, I raise. Now I might over limp. For example, the 3-5 suited hand we just discussed. That's different. But I'm the first person in the pot. I'm going to be aggressive and take control of the pot. Also, another thing I don't do very often is limp from the small blind. It's just another situation where I'd rather take control of the pot and be aggressive. Putting other people to the test is just always going to make life easier in poker. People crumble under the pressure in athletics, life. People, having to speak in front of a group is very difficult and pressure, and it's just not easy to do. So, aggression translates and or I'm sorry, it can put the pressure on the people on your opponents that you know works to your advantage, whether it be to get folds or to get them or to dictate maybe the action in some way, shape, or form. Just aggression is just so important in poker. Inflection points, something I brought up a little bit. They are just very, very important. When you get down to, let's say you lose a big pot and get down to 10 blinds late in a tournament, this is an inflection point because let's say you just went from 50 blinds to 10. You don't have a whole lot you can do with 10 big blinds. It's essentially shove all in or nothing. So I'm going to try to show you how to identify different inflection points and how to combat them. Really just try to give you guys the really important ones and easy to identify points that are important, and hopefully we can build on it from there, or you can build on it with further development of your own game. With my coaching approach, consistency is so important, and I try to be very, very consistent. If I am giving you advice in this series or a series a year from now, if it's discussing a fundamental as simple as like set mining or calling odds or drawing, where the math is involved, I'm going to be giving you the same consistent information today or a year from now. I'm always looking to adapt. That's, the next thing on the PowerPoint. And I will adapt my coaching if I see something changing in the MTT game. But consistency with things like drawing, what, when, where, and how I shove certain stacks, that's all going to be very, very consistent. And I want to give that consistent information because to me, I think it's the best way to help students duplicate success. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for one-time success. We want continued MTT wins, cashes, final tables, all that good stuff. So that is my goal as far as consistency. Flexibility as well. Always trying to adapt. If I play a ton of mid stakes, low stakes. I play the majors as well. I want to know what's going on at all levels, especially as I'm coaching a lot of micro to mid stakes guys. So I want my information to be relevant and good, and I also want to always be adapting my own game as well. So I will be doing that as my coaching. It's going to be one of my goals in coaching as well. So, that's my style and coaching approach. My goals for this series, as far as coaching goes, is to make sure that everybody gets something out of this series. Whether you're a novice player, intermediate, transitioning, or even advanced players. For you novice and real newbies out there, I really hope the basics and the fundamentals resonate, stick, and that you get excited to play and put them out there. For you intermediate or transitioning players, I hope those fundamentals maybe allow you to plug some leaks that you might have or improve on stuff you already know. And if you're an advanced player and you're here taking in the series, sometimes getting back to the basics, you might find a leak that you didn't notice before, or maybe you started to get a little aggressive with set mining, or maybe you started limping or calling more than you were beforehand. It never hurts to just take a look at your game. So, my goal for this series is for everybody involved to get something out of it, including myself. I hope that I find the leaks in my coaching and video game, and hopefully I can improve on those as well. Now that we've outlined the series a bit and discussed my style, let's talk about the basics that I said that we were going to discuss today. Basically, I'd like to go over some of this stuff for the guys that are brand new to MTTs. This will be, the very basics that you guys that are comfortable and familiar with MTTs already know. So, types of MTTs, freeze outs. A freeze out, whether it is a $10 tournament at your buddy's house or the World Series main event, if you buy in for X amount and get Y chips, and that is all the chips you get, and if you lose them, they're done. That is a freeze out. Play down to one winner that gets all the chips. Everybody else busted at some point. Rebuys. There are tournaments with unlimited rebuy for a set amount of time. Online, this might be 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. They're pretty rare live. You don't see as many rebuy tournaments live anymore. Very popular online. As you see on the PowerPoint, let's discuss unlimited versus cubed or quad. A cubed tournament is slang. Oh, I'm sorry. Just one sec. I'm gonna pause it. Looks like the PowerPoint's a little off. Just one second. All right. Sorry, guys. I think it's back and good. Yeah. So, cube tournament slang for one rebuy, one add-on. Say, on Stars, they're very popular. In the first hour, you can take your rebuy at any time, and if you bust your buy-in and rebuy, you're out. And then a quad is two rebuys and an add-on. So just little different versions. If you want to learn more about them, check them out. They're online. Satellites, a mega satellite. That's something like 70 players put up an amount, and five people. Let's say the top five, whoever the last five standing, get a seat into a bigger buy-in event. The main event of the World Series of Poker is very satellite driven. I would guess 75% of the field has gotten in from satellites. So these are very popular. So yeah, mega satellite, let's say 100 players buy in for $1,000. So the top 10 get seats into the $10,000 main event. A single table satellite might be 10 guys put up 1,000. The winner gets a $10,000 seat. So yeah, satellites very very popular. For the player that doesn't get to play a lot, whether that be live or online, the recreational player definitely likes to saddy into the big event, take the shot at the big money. So there's a lot of value in satellites, and we will discuss them throughout the series. Shootouts. A shootout is essentially you play to win your table and then you move to the next table. A shootout might have two players, 6, 9, 8, just about anything. Heads up tournament where it's one on one. It's just that essentially like March Madness or any other sort of sports tournament. You win, you move on. A six-handed shootout might be six tables of six. The winner of each table, goes down to a six-handed final table, etc. So it's quite a few shootouts online. Lastly, I put MTT sit and goes on here. A sit and go is when that amount of players sit, the tournament starts. When 18 players sit down, or 45, 90, 180, that's when the tournament goes. Very good for people on limited time. A lot of the concepts are the same. They are a little bit different, but I thought I would definitely throw them in there for the new players. All right, the next thing I want to talk about as far as basics go is structure. The structure is the amount of chips you start with, the blinds, and how they escalate. Um, Essentially, how the action is dictated. It's not really like a clock might be in sports, but similar. It's got some of the same things. So let's start with regular, even though it's the second thing on the structure, just because that's going to be what you'll see the most and what you guys that already know tournaments are probably comfortable with. You know, the quote unquote regular structure online is anything from 10 to 15-minute levels depending on the site, and 1500 to 2 to or 1500 to maybe 5000 starting chips. It's many different variations. Stars a little different than full tilt. Full tilt's a little bit different than UB or the Euro sites, etc. So, but they're pretty much in that realm, 10 to 15, 20 minutes, and 1500 to 5000 starting stacks. Online versus live is definitely going to be different. We're getting a lot more hands online, so the structures can move a little bit faster and still get the play in. Live, nightly or a bar or local home game might be a 20-minute level to 40 minutes. Then, maybe in a live deep stacked event, up to 2 hours like the main event at the World Series. Turbo structure is essentially just the same thing as a regular, just maybe a little bit fewer chips, and the blinds are probably, around 2 times as fast. The tournaments are quite a bit quicker, and good for people who maybe want to or don't have the time to play a full 7 or 8 hour MTT. So, yeah, it's essentially just a regular structure, just kind of on caffeine a little faster. Then there's also the super and hyper turbo tournaments online that are kind of MTTs on crack, 300 chips, and the blinds go up every 2 to 3 minutes. They are very fun, but very, very variant, and you can get through a 1500 man field in 80 90 minutes. It's pretty crazy. Another type of structure that you'll hear about, one of the buzzwords in poker, the deep stacked. Sometimes deep stacked tournaments aren't exactly what they say. You have to take a look at the entire tournament structure to really decide if it is a deep stack tournament. Um, but yeah, that's just essentially more chips, longer levels, more play. There's the deep stack tournaments on stars that actually go, I think, up 12 to 14 hours. I remember I had success in one early in my online playing days, and I had registered for it at like 8 p.m. Didn't really know what I was getting into, and was still playing at 8 a.m. the next morning. It was a great score, but you got to know what you're getting into. So, yeah, time considerations for those three: turbo, regular, and deep stacked. Turbo tournaments pretty quick, 3 to 4 hours for even a big field. Regular longer, 7, 8, 9 hours. Deep stacked, live or online, they're going to be quite a bit longer because the goal is a lot of play, and those are the tournaments where skill definitely rises to the top more often than not, especially in those big buy-ins online and live. The more play, the bigger the advantage for the good player. Another type of structure that I have on here is anti-driven, just meaning most regular tournaments focus on the blinds. Antes do come into play, but the blind is what drives the action. There are ante up tournaments where actually the blinds stay exactly the same the whole time and the antes go up. And there's also tournaments, even deep stack tournaments. There's the new super stack early antes on full tilt that I'm a big fan of, where you have antes, I think, from the first hand. It really drives the action. and I think benefits the better players. So just kind of an idea of what anti-driven is, and hopefully a good example of all the different types of structures. If you're taking MTT seriously and you want to develop your game and you want to get better, and you want to have some success, you need to have plans, and that's going to start even as much as, do I have the time to play this tournament? Or, you know, from the get go, just know what you're getting into and be ready for it. The next basic and little thing I want to talk about with MTTs for everybody is payouts. How often you can expect to get paid, and we'll discuss variance a little bit. That goes in with both payouts and field sizes that you see here on the PowerPoint. So, yeah, 10 to 20%, kind of the standard. You will see, I mean, I would probably say 95, 98% of tournaments online fall into that 10 to 20%. So get used to that. Certain sites play a little bit different. Some tournaments actually have different structures. Some are more top heavy, more steep, as it says up there. But yeah, that's the standard live online stars full tilt UB. I think I did see a cake tournament once where it paid 40 players out of 99, but that was just something weird. I don't know what that was all about. So yeah, with variance, a good player might be cashing anywhere from 10 to 20% as well. Pretty standard. It's not really about how often you cash, it's more about the top threes. Very top heavy tournaments, they very much reward top threes. So really don't try to focus on how often you're cashing. It's good to cash more, but you don't want to be passing up opportunities in the tournament that could help you win it just to cash. Something we'll talk about further on. But yeah, the variance, because to be a successful player and you do need to be playing to win the tournament, there will be variance. You will get 11ths, from when you made an aggressive play. It's just the nature of the beast. You have to be ready for it. We kind of discussed that in the beginning. Variance will happen. Flat versus steep, kind of touched on it, and top threes. A flatter payout structure would pay, say, 20%. A steeper would pay that 10%, and another variable in a steep structure is how much do they favor the top three. Um, the steeper the better, for the skilled player. The skilled player expects to win more often, and the skilled player is gonna play for the win. So yeah, another thing I've got to say is, if you're in a tournament that you have to if cashing is hugely significant to your bankroll, that's a tournament that you shouldn't be playing regularly. There's outliers where maybe you satellited into the main event or something. I can understand, you know, trying to cash, but if it's a regular tournament that you're playing, play to win. Another thing to discuss, field size. It goes into variance as well. Um, the question here essentially is bigger prizes versus more variance. The bigger the field sizes, the bigger the prize, and there's nothing like winning a 5,000 man tournament. It's amazing. But you're also just not going to win them as often as you're going to win a 120, 130, 140 man tournament. I suggest a nice mix of all. I play the 180 mans on stars. I play on AP and cake for the smaller fields, but I also play the Sunday quarter million on stars, whatever the 30,000 manner, and I also play the double deuce on full tilt, 10,000 players. Good mix is what I suggest. If you're looking for smaller fields, there's the MTT sit and goes, 45, 90, 180 mans. There's cap tournaments. Stars has 200, 360, 500 man caps. I think Full Tilt has 180 man cap tournaments. Or if you're looking for other ways to add smaller fields, take a look at playing Sirius, UB, AP, Cake Network, the Euro sites if you're outside the US. There's a million options, guys. You can also talk about playing at a different time of the day. There's also more regulars on, at certain times. There's always ways you can, you know, change up when you're playing and the field sizes you're playing, and this should allow you to hopefully control your variance, which like I've said a couple times, is going to be there in MTTs. There's no way around it. Couple more. Okay, we've talked about some basics. The layouts, structures, different types. Now let's take a minute to discuss kind of some objectives, some things that you are going to if you want to be successful, that you need to do every single tournament. For me, bottom line is just being aware. What's going on at your table? What are players doing? The bottom line, especially the beginning of a tournament, you can't worry about what's going on other places. All you have is your table, your position, your situation. Focus on that. Um, being aware, is it a tight table? Is it a nitty? Is it an aggressive table? Is there a couple really bad players? Is there a couple really good players? It takes some time to learn how to make these reads and be aware of this, but just from the get-go, watch what other people are doing. What are their bet sizes? What hands are being showed down? Do they play big pots? Are they scared? Just any information. Poker's a game of imperfect information, and he who has the most and uses it the best, that mixed with a little bit of luck, that's how you find a very good poker player. You know, uh, Awareness online. People, my little brother, for instance, and a lot of regs, they'll play up to 20, 24 tables. Some people, people don't understand how you can do that. Well, it comes with experience, but then there's also software, the Hold'em managers, poker trackers. There's note taking. You can use the color coordination systems on Stars and Full Tilt to make color notes on players. Anything you can use to get information, and then as you get better and better with experience, how you can start adding tables, being profitable, and still know what's going on. Um, Live awareness live. Pay attention to what hands people are playing, what positions. Is it a calling station or an aggro player? Don't try to look at a player's neck find some flinch tell. That's not what you're gonna find. Watch how they play, and you know that's also the best carryover between live and online play, is those type of tells and reads are gold both live and online. How a person plays a hand. So yeah, awareness just so important. Another thing to be aware of will be those inflection points that we're going to learn to identify and combat. All right, a big blind level is a big jump just happened. Our stack went from 19 to 16 blinds. We might be shoving in some more spots, or we might get more aggressive blind versus blind. We might shove any ace now, whereas we might not the orbit before. So being aware of those inflection points, whether it's stack sizes, blinds going up, a bubble, that's awareness. Also being aware of the structure. Similar to what we just talked about. If you know when if you're in a weird stack size or in a weird situation, knowing when the blinds are going to go up, or or when antes are going to come into play, it might help you make a decision easier. And anytime we can make decisions easier in poker, we're all for it. Lastly, MTT an objective, just kind of something I wanted to touch on. The very, I almost touched on it earlier actually in this, but survival, just bottom line, you want to stay alive. You can't win the tournament the first level. You can't win the tournament with 15 people left. Survival is number one and so big. So, you know, we don't want to be passing up good opportunities to grow your stack, but we also don't want to go nuts early in tournaments. You don't want to take yourself out of tournaments, bottom line. So, be cautious with making the mistakes early in MTTs. I say avoid some marginal spots here. Just kind of ties into I'm a relatively tight player, evil early in tournaments, and yeah, kind of just ties into how I will coach some spots or talk about hands. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. This will be the last slide for today. We're going to take a quick to have a quick discussion about styles and just give you an overview of some things you may have talked about, heard of, or know, and you want some clarification. Lag versus tag, the two most thrown common references to a tournament style or even a poker style. They'll talk about lag and tag for cash players as well, of course. Loose aggressive versus tight aggressive. What's the bottom line? Aggressive. You have to be aggressive in poker, or if you call or limp or fold, you will never win a poker tournament. You could win a poker tournament raise or folding every hand, but you could never win a poker tournament by just calling and folding and limping. It would be the most absurd thing of all time. So yeah, just quick definition and examples. Lag's just loose aggressive. Guys that might be the more aggressive, or I mean, not necessarily more aggressive, but playing more hands in more situations, might be more aggressive with their three betting in position, out of position. Type player, kind of sticks to the good cards, good positions, picks and chooses his spots. Kind of a less variant style. A lag player's chip stack's going to look like a roller coaster, while a tag player's might look more like an escalator, a little more straight up, not the big swings. Small ball ties into that as well. That's a style kind of made popular by a lot of the professionals. Daniel Negreanu's talked about it a lot. It's just a style where you play a lot more pots, but a lot smaller pots, and look to kind of have that escalator, looking style. Actually, that was kind of a bad example that I just said that. A loose, aggressive player who plays good small ball might have a good escalator looking chip stack, while a tag player might actually play a ton of big pots and have the up and down as well. So I'm gonna use that escalator example more for small ball, a player who plays a lot of small hands and tries to steadily build and not get into a lot of big all-in situations or huge pots. This is a style that's also tougher to play. It takes more experience. You need to be a better hand reader. You need to do a really good job post flop. It's not easy. That being said, most of professionals play a style similar to this, or at least an adaptation of it, because it's very effective. Big pot poker. It's not talked about like small ball, or it's not a real common theme, or I don't know if anyone has ever really coined big pot poker, but it's essentially what you just see from, I think, action driven players, maybe cash players or gamblers or recreational guys just looking to play some hands. Um, Guys that play big pots, they're getting big flush draws in early, not really ever worried about pot control, or will get ace king in early in a tournament. Also, you'll see on the PowerPoint, I've got kill fill in quotations. This was kind of the style in the kill fill books. The point was to try to give the amateur player a way to combat the professional in live events, or even probably even the big live or the big online tournaments. I didn't read the book. I read Kill Phil 2, which was, I think, called Kill Everybody. Actually, it wasn't necessarily for the attacking professional players. But yeah, just a little idea. Yeah, and like I said, I think I've seen that most from really action driven players, especially live. Um, Last thing I want to end on: many styles, many different players. The best players adapt in MTTs. You need to be able to play lag style or tight style. You need, on a tight table, you need to be able to open it up. You need to be able to learn how to attack certain players. You also need, if you are an aggressive player by nature or a loose player, you need to learn when and where to tighten up. We're not going to be able to give everybody everything in this video, but I'd really like to touch on things that I find are very important, and things that are, consistent, that we can duplicate, ways that we can become consistent, confident uh, winners and enjoy playing tournaments. So I'm excited for the rest of the series. I hope everybody is as well. The next episode we will start with early stage play. All right, this is Dang16 for Deuces Cracked. Good luck.